Jack, please start your video and start the introduction.
Good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jack Swartz. I serve on the board of directors of the Vilna Show. I am sorry that we can't meet in person to marvel in the splendor of the Vilna, a truly historic and spiritual place. The Vilna Show is a turn-of-the-century building, the last of the immigrant-era synagogues in Boston. It was saved from destruction by a group of visionaries in the 80s. It now serves as a cultural center, museum, and window into the past. It is Boston's only Jewish historic landmark, a true living museum. If you have never been here, I welcome to visit when life returns to normal. My wife, Sandy, and I have been involved in the Vilna for about 20 years. I am past president of the board. Our son Tyler was bar mitzvah at the Vilna in 2008, the first traditional bar mitzvah in the building in decades. I would like to thank the Jewish Community Center of the North Shore for organizing this program and including us as partners. I would also like to acknowledge Lynn and the Vilna staff for organizing this and other Zoom events that included over 5,000 participants during the pandemic. The building was built in 1919 during the Spanish flu epidemic. I am sure it was an extremely terrifying period for our Lithuanian founders. I can't imagine how they cope with all the uncertainty, but I am sure that they would be extremely proud of how we have kept the Vilna relevant and vital during these uncertain times. Thank you again for attending the virtual event at the Vilna Show, a hidden gem on the slopes of Beacon Hill. It is my pleasure to introduce Diane Knopf, the president of the Jewish Community Center of the North Shore, an author and philanthropist, to hear about today's program, another hidden gem on the shores of the Red Sea. Diane?
Thank you so much, Jack. We're thrilled to be partnering with the Vilna Show for this event. Good Sunday morning, everyone, and welcome to the 5th JCCNS Jewish Book Month event of our 2020 season. I'm Diane Knopf, the chair of the JCCNS's speaker series, and I'm so grateful for you all attending virtually. I'm very proud to tell you that this is our 26th year of bringing a vibrant and diverse array of new and established authors and topics to our community. This year's Jewish Book Month speaker series has something for everyone, so we hope you can join us for the remaining events happening throughout October and November. We're very grateful to all our sponsors who help make this possible, and especially to cultural benefactors Sharon and Howard Rich. I want to also thank our dedicated Jewish Book Month committee, JCC staff, including Sarah Ewing, Stephanie Greenfield, Karen Robinson, and certainly others. This would not be possible without all your efforts. I'm missing seeing you all in person, but I'm grateful for this technology that helps bring us together, and that's our silver lining. So before we begin tonight, I want to encourage you to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen anytime during the event, and Raffi Berg and Danny Lamore will be answering your questions after their talk, with Debbi Cenziper facilitating. So let's begin. Raffi Berg is the Middle East editor of the BBC News website. A journalist for nearly 30 years, he has a particular interest in events in Israel, from where he has reported extensively in times of war and peace. He graduated in modern and medieval history from the London School of Economics and was a student of Jewish and Israel studies at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Raffi is based in London, where he lives with his family. Danny Lamore was born and raised in Montevideo, Uruguay. He made Aliyah on his own at the age of 16, studying for 3 years at a yeshiva, followed by service in the IDF as an officer in the paratroopers brigade. Danny participated in 4 wars between 1967 in 1982, rising to the rank of lieutenant colonel. In 1968, he was recruited to the Mossad, where he served in various capacities for 25 years. Among his many tasks, he commanded Operation Brothers, which spirited Ethiopian Jews out of Sudan and onward to Israel. In the Red Sea diving resort movie based on Raffi's book, the actor Chris Evans channels Danny. Currently, Danny is mapping emerging Jewish communities around the world in places like Africa, Asia, and Latin America for the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs. He holds a degree in political science and international relations from Bar-Ilan University and is fluent in English, French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Hebrew, Yiddish, and Arabic. Debbi Cenziper is an investigative journalist, professor, and author based in Washington, D.C. A contributing reporter for the investigative team at the Washington Post, she has won many major awards in print journalism, including the 2007 Pulitzer Prize. Debbi is the co-author of the critically acclaimed Love Wins, The Lovers and Lawyers Who Fought the Landmark Case for Marriage Equality. She was recently named the Director of Investigative Journalism at the Northwestern University Medill School of Journalism. And so, without further ado, it's my pleasure now to introduce Raffi Berg.
Hello, thank you for having me. This is my first visit to Vilna. I have been to Vilna, yes, but my first to Vilna in Boston. In fact, my long-term best friend from the UK now lives in Boston. What I'd like to do to start off with is to praise you with the premise for this absolutely astonishing story, which became a book and has really been a journey of discovery for me for the past 2 years or so. For those who are aware, there was a Netflix movie called The Red Sea Diving Resort, which came out last year. And it's not quite right. I don't want to take credit where credit isn't due. It's not quite right that the film was based on the book. The film was inspired by the story, by the same story that the book tells the authentic account of. Just to put it in perspective, the story tells events of the most incredible kind over the period of about 1980 to approximately 1985, where the Mossad, led by Danny Lemore, who commanded the operation, spirited Ethiopian Jews out of Sudan and onward to Israel. But the Mossad did so in the most unbelievable way. It's really a case where truth is stranger than fiction. They did it by establishing themselves in a diving resort, a fake diving resort on the Red Sea coast of Sudan, where they operated by day as diving instructors, hosting guests and clients from around the world. And by night, Danny and his team would go off into the desert and carry out effectively people smuggling operations to transport the Jews from refugee camps and onwards to the coast, where a ship would wait and transport them to Israel. So that's the basis of the story, and I'm delighted to expand on this in many ways with Debbi, who is moderating today.
Good morning, everyone. And I should tell you that I budgeted a couple of days to read your book, and I finished it in the span of a couple of hours. I was late to work and I couldn't put it down. It wasn't just well written and powerful and exciting. It really, I didn't know about this operation, and the history of it was fascinating. So I guess my first question is, when did this project get started, and what was it that intrigued you most about writing a book on this topic?
Well, that's a great starting point. I stumbled across this story, which I really knew almost nothing about. So I heard that a movie was being made about a top secret Mossad operation in Sudan. And just out of my own personal curiosity, I started to look into it, and really what I found just absolutely blew me away. Look, I've spent nearly at least 25 years in journalism. I've come across stories of every shape, size, across the spectrum you can imagine. Nothing really compares to this as a fantastic story which happened in real life. So one thing led to another. I was given the opportunity to write a book about it, and that's really obviously where the hard part starts, because where'd you go? I didn't have any contacts in Mossad, and you can't really ring up the Mossad, introduce yourself as a journalist sniffing around, wanting to write a book and ask for some secrets to be spilled. But one thing led to another without taking up too much time. And I was put in touch with Danny, who I spoke to initially on the telephone. He didn't want to have a telephone conversation with me, but wanted to meet me face to face to hear what it was that I was interested in. And we met in an airport, Charles de Gaulle Airport. If you can picture it, I was there going to meet a former Mossad agent at Charles de Gaulle Airport. It was a beautiful moment. And I put my proposal to him, and he clearly wanted to check me out face to face. And he went away, considered my pitch, came back to me weeks later and said he was very interested in developing it with me, with one specific criteria. And that was that the book would need to document authentically the events which took place. And that's how it came about.
What was your pitch, and how hard was it for you to convince him to work with you on this, to tell a story?
Well, we've got a version of The Apprentice here in the UK. And it was a little bit like that, because I was sat across the table from Danny, and we had less than an hour over a cup of coffee. I had one shot at persuading him that this was a project which I wanted to do. My heart was in it. I wanted to treat it with sincerity. And I'd been told by a mutual contact that if Danny wasn't on board, then forget it. It couldn't be done. So thankfully, he accepted my persuasive arguments. And I think perhaps it's a question for him to answer why he felt I was the right person. Because I happen to know that he had previously had two other approaches to write a book on this. One from Ariel Sharon's own biographer, which didn't ultimately happen. So, it was an absolute honor, and I absolutely mean that, and a privilege for me to have this opportunity to write the book and convey what happened. The story doesn't belong to me. I have no ownership of it, but it's been an absolute privilege to be able to put this down in writing and to share it with as many audiences as I can. Because not only is it an incredible story of drama and danger and daring do, and a little bit of deceit, of course, but at the heart of this is a community, the community of the Ethiopian Jews, about whom I knew next to nothing before I started this project. And my heart has absolutely been lost to them. They're a special community. Perhaps we'll get onto this in a bigger way shortly, but everything is owed to them. What happened in the events which took place was a partnership, an equal partnership between the Mossad and the Ethiopian Jews, who were agents of their own fate and accomplished incredible things.
Yeah, I'm really anxious to get into that. But before we do, we're so lucky to have Danny here, who is the star of the book in many ways. And sitting at an airport, willing to talk to us, which is so great. Danny, can you tell us why you decided to share your story when you did? What was it that made you want to tell this story or help tell this story?
The fact that an Englishman paid for the coffee. No, I tell you, actually, too many wrong things were already published. There was a book already published that didn't really give the real picture, although some facts were there. And then my lack of capability of influencing the film that was done as much as I wanted, just partly. And look, this is a chapter that doesn't belong to me personally. This is a chapter that belongs to the Jewish people, to Israel. And so I think this is, when you work in that sort of place, 99% of what you do, you never speak about. But this is different. So Raffi really gave me the impression that he was going to do the right thing. And I was right. This is the profession. You have to estimate people in, he says, 1 hour. I think after 10 minutes, I already knew that I was going to work with him.
Isn't that interesting? And I guess, Raffi, you don't need to dramatize a story that's already so dramatic. You really just need to let the story tell itself. For purposes of this audience, tell us a little bit about the Ethiopian Jews, because I did not know anything about this history until I read your book. Tell us what they were dealing with and living with for so many generations.
Yeah, definitely. As I said, it was Ethiopian Jewry was unknown to me. They were obscure. It was a black hole. But they go back to as far back as you and I, the Jewish people, go. Their origins, to some, are shrouded in obscurity. It was really only very recently, relatively recently, in the 1970s, that scholars started to seriously look into where the Jews of Ethiopia came from. I mean, it's accepted by the by the rabbis and the sages down the centuries that the Jews of Ethiopia actually descend from the tribe of Dan. Dan was one of the 12 tribes of Israel, descendants, children of Jacob. There are various schools of thought as to how the tribe of Dan came to settle in Ethiopia. One theory is that the tribe left Israel as far back as just after the reign of King Solomon. So we're talking about 3,000 years ago. There's reasons why, given that I don't have time to go into it now. Another theory is that they were captured. They became one of the 10 lost tribes, captured when the Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom, or that they were captured by the Babylonian invasion during the Babylonian invasion in the 6th century, so on and so forth, and eventually made their way to Ethiopia. One of the most exotic theories is that they were descendants of a relationship between the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon. It's a tradition, it's a legend, but it's a tradition which is maintained to this day by the Orthodox Ethiopian Church. It's a beautiful story. It's I wrote about it in my book. There are questions up to as I said, recently as 1970s, among some sections of the Jewish community in Israel, are the Ethiopian Jews authentic Jews? Once the State of Israel was established in 1948, Jews from across the world were allowed to come to this place of refuge, barring the Jews of Ethiopia, because they weren't recognized as real Jews. And I use this term, real Jews. They kept the commandments in the most scrupulously authentic way that you can possibly imagine. Shabbat, if you think about the way Orthodox Jews keep Shabbat, it was almost incomparable in many ways to the perfection with which Ethiopian Jews observed Shabbos. They kept the laws of Kashrus. They kept the festivals, not the modern festivals, not the festivals which evolved after the Talmudic period. So they didn't celebrate Hanukkah, for instance, Purim, well, in a different way, but and so on. But so we're talking about, there's no question about the authenticity of Ethiopian Jews. I'd like to make a really interesting point. It's an observation. It's not my observation, but for centuries, Ethiopian Jews didn't know that there were any other Jews on planet Earth. They thought they were the last remaining Jews in the world. And they were visited for the first time by an outsider Jewish person, a Frenchman called Joseph Halevi in 1867. And he writes in a travel log how he met Jewish villagers in Ethiopia, northern Ethiopia, who didn't believe he was Jewish. But as soon as he mentioned Jerusalem, the name Jerusalem, he writes how the atmosphere changed and the villagers became transfixed and bombarded him with questions about what's Jerusalem like. They didn't know that it had been conquered by the Romans. We're talking about the late 19th century, and they were absolutely crestfallen to learn that Jerusalem had fallen 2,000 years earlier. Why? Because they were driven by a commitment from generation to generation, a longing, an ancestral longing to return to the land of their forefathers. Every generation expected and lived in hope that theirs would be the one to fulfill the prophecy of Isaiah and others, that Jews from the land of Cush, Ethiopia, Cush, would return to the land of Jerusalem. But it wasn't until the advent of Menachem Begin and the operation which Danny led, which enabled them to do so. So what unfolded with the Red Sea diving resort was the opening of a gateway for the Jews of Ethiopia to return to their ancestral land.
And it wasn't just a rescue operation. As you said earlier, they participated in their own rescue, very much so, working directly with Danny to do it. Can you talk about their efforts? And Danny, can you also talk about their efforts and your friend, is it Farid? Did I pronounce that right? Who really worked?
Farid is
Yeah.
Farid is an Arabic name. Ferede. Ferede Aklum. That's his family name. I just spoke about 2 hours ago with his younger brother who is in Israel. Well, first you have to understand that everything that Raffi has told you that he found out while doing his research and maybe talking to me about 2 years ago, I am living with it about 40 years. That means that incredible chapter of the Beta Israel, of the Jews of Ethiopia, their survival as a Jewish, keeping the Jewish identity in a hostile place and without even knowing that there are other Jews. This is, once you learn about it, either, you have no feelings, you have no heart, or you fall into it because it's unique. All the other very far away and exotic Jewish communities like the Yemenites and the Kurds and the Americans, all of them knew that there are other Jews everywhere. And you have put yourself in their heads. Why should they even resist the efforts of the church to convert them into Christianity? That's because they thought they were the last Jews and they were obliged to survive in order to return to Zion. And that you have to understand that. And once you see that point, everything becomes easier. The motivation of the people, our motivation, those of us who came from Israel to Sudan, and the motivation of the Jews themselves, the Beta Israel, who marched for many weeks, sometimes months, on foot sometimes barefooted, from Ethiopia to Sudan, and then spent time in the camps, the refugee camps, and died. A lot of them died. Yeah. You know, they lost about 1,560. Those are the names who are engraved on the monument for the fallen in Mount Herzl in Jerusalem. So, you know, for us, once I was the first to go to Sudan because this guy, Ferdi Aklum, who is not with us anymore and he's like a brother to me, sent a message. And he was a known person, and he sent a message, please, you know, send me a ticket because I want to come to Israel. And we decided to get in touch with him instead of sending him a ticket. And after a few meetings, it was clear that as the same way he walked and came into the Sudan, others could do it. And well, the rest is history. You know, we can develop, after Raffi gives his answer, we can develop on how we did it. So I pass.
What I would like to say, which is a very important point and one which I make early in the book, is you know, when we think of perhaps a much better known operation is Operation Moses, we think of the rescue of Ethiopian Jews, and it was really, my thinking has been completely rewired because this term rescue is not accepted by Ethiopian Jews, quite rightly, and the participants like Danny and others, his colleagues and so on and so forth, don't treat it as a rescue of Ethiopian Jews. Why? Because it was the Ethiopian Jews themselves who went by foot, as Danny said, hundreds of kilometers to get from Ethiopia to Sudan, its neighboring country. And they put their lives at risk and took a tremendous leap of faith to get to the point at which they could be evacuated. So rescue is, you know, gives us, and this is perhaps where the movie went slightly wrong. It's fairly patronizing to treat it as a rescue, is without the efforts and the actions and the leadership and heroism of the Ethiopian Jews, none of this could have happened.
I'd like to get to the diving resort, but I had one question for Danny before we do, which is some of the most, you're in the most harrowing moments and scenes from this book, of the things that you experienced in working with the Ethiopian Jews to help them flee. And I just wondered, Danny, what that was like. I know you've been doing this for a long time, but what that was like for you to recount those moments, to have to, in some ways, relive them by telling them to Raffi.
Well, you know, working with Raffi, the way he works, because he's a very thorough man, and he doesn't leave anything, you know, unchecked. And I told him from the beginning, don't believe anything I say, cross-check me, because, you know, after so many years, things, sometimes, you know, you have a tendency to how do you say, to add some beauty to the story. But actually what happened to me, I don't know what happened to Raffi. We can see the book. What happened to me is many things that I had already, you know, forgotten, or they say put aside, came back. And we spent hours, of course, Raffi and me, talking. And he was asking me questions that made me, you know, think and remember. And because, look, I'll tell you, between you and me, nobody else is listening, I was thinking about maybe writing a book myself. But I don't know, I don't have what Raffi has, which is called in Yiddish, Sitzfleisch. I don't know if you understand what I mean. That means I don't have this capacity of sitting and writing and so on. So that was an opportunity for me to really remember and to bring back all those memories. So, yep.
Wow.
Can I just say, sorry to interrupt your flow there, Debbie. I worked on the book 10 hours a day. I get up in the morning, first thing I do is start working on it. And I had a deadline to meet. It was actually a very, very narrow window before I had to deliver my first draft. And, to compile a tremendous amount of different pieces of information it was a Herculean task. But I have to say, what a joy it was. I absolutely loved the writing process because it was this story just absolutely not only captured my imagination, it absolutely captured my heart. And, to sit down and write every day, something which was a labor of love really just helped it happen. And, hopefully the results shine through in the book.
Feel it reading the book. So tell us now about the diving resort wasn't the first thing that happened, right? There were other ways that Ethiopian Jews were removed or sent to Israel, right? Or helped through, what was it? It was in the early months that Danny was working, and then the diving resort came up. So tell us about how that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I'll ask Danny to say to cover this, but you're quite right. There were different methods used, and the diving resort was not the first way that the Mossad smuggled or spirited the Jews out of Sudan. So perhaps Danny, I think you're the exact person to shine a light on this.
Oh, we can't hear.
Danny, we're not getting your audio. Gotcha.
Now you hear me?
Yes, correct. Yeah, you're with us.
I'm saying that this what happened before the diving resort took almost 2 years of action and activity, but I'm not going to enter into detail because it would take a long time. All the beginnings are difficult. So first of all, Further and myself, we had to find ways to bring the Jews or to let the Jews know that if they came to Sudan, we will be waiting. And we had to build a sort of infrastructure to receive them there and to bring them from the area of the camps to the capital, Khartoum, which is about 400 kilometers. We could not drive by day, and we had to do everything by night, and including not stopping at military checkpoints or barriers. So all these things, we did not move lots of people. When I say lots, we didn't move hundreds of people at once. We moved tens of people at once, which made a lot of back and forth of those 400 kilometers, which becomes 800, And once we started succeeding in attracting the Jews to come to Sudan, I mean, they would pass their message that they already made it to safety back home. So many would start walking and reaching the Sudan. And so this method of bringing them to the capital and hiding them in safe houses, and then sending them in commercial flights by small numbers to Europe. When I used to pass as a United Nations member, which I was not, of course, we had to look for another solution. And the other solution was lying there all the time. But we didn't first go to that solution because of the distance. To go from the camps to the Red Sea coast was 900 kilometers, more than double than the one to Khartoum. So that already says that we could not do it in one night of driving. We had to split it into 2 nights. We had to hide during the day. And when I went looking for places that were fit to meetings with the Israeli Navy commandos or SEALs, going northwards along the coast, with a colleague of mine, we stumbled upon this resort that seemed as a dream to us in the beginning, but I found out that this was a resort that had been active until 2 years before. There was a Bedouin guardian who told me what to do if I wanted to lease the place. So I went to Khartoum and I met the Director General of the Ministry of Tourism, former Brigadier General in the Army. And I negotiated with him the lease of the camp. For those who have seen the film, it was in the reality not at all like in the film. He never asked any commission for himself. And he was a thorough, really honest civil servant. And we became very good friends. Well, you know, I didn't have any idea how much I should pay for leasing this resort. So I asked him how much he wanted. And he said $500,000 a year. Now, being in the Middle East, you know that you never accept any quote as it is. You have to discuss, even if you think it's the right price. So he said 500, I said 200. And then he started going down and I went up, and we met at half the price. So I signed an agreement with him for $250,000 a year. By the way, we operated that resort 5 years. In the third year, we made more money than the lease from clients that came. Are you going to show some slides, Raffi?
Yes, that was, I can. I'm keeping an eye on time. I think it's, yeah, let's do that.
Okay, whatever.
I think we want to get to Q&A, but before we do, I think, Raffi, a slide or two would be great. And if you could just quickly explain how many Jews were saved, how many Jews were transported from the
Sure.
Israel, and just briefly, how did it work?
Sure. So what you should be able, just give me an indication if you can see my screen. Okay. This just gives you a geographical idea of where we're talking about. This is Ethiopia, here's Sudan. The diving resort was at a place called Arus on the coast, just here. I'm going to skip through a few slides simply because of the time available to us. You can still find the resort on Google Maps. This is something which I did. Here it is. It's on a peninsula north of Port Sudan. You need to zoom in very closely. This is an annotated layout of what it was like. The agents' rooms. The agents occupied some rooms down in the south of this chain of villas. And I don't have time to go into it, but how it operated is all covered in the book. This is a remarkable image of a brochure which was produced by the Mossad to advertise the resort to diving enthusiasts and those wanting a holiday with a bit of with a difference. It was a beautiful part of the world, an unexplored, a virginal stretch of beach on the Red Sea coast of Sudan. This is a picture of nighttime of Israeli Navy SEALs in their effectively their dinghies coming to rendezvous with Danny and his team who were waiting on the beach. And the Israeli Navy SEALs would take the Ethiopian Jews from the Mossad and transport them back to a mothership and then onwards to Israel. The image you can see here is it's actually a night taken in, it looks like daytime. It was taken in with infrared at nighttime. Hercules aircraft on a landing strip in the desert. Say a landing strip, there's no such thing, not an actual landing strip, but a portion of desert which was cleared by the Mossad agents in anticipation for the Hercules plane to land. And the figures you can see here are Ethiopian Jews being led to the plane. And you have to bear in mind that the Ethiopian Jews came from a culture, a place which was perhaps 2 centuries behind modern Israel, and they hadn't seen a light bulb or electricity or motor vehicles, let alone the Hercules aircraft. So what they were being asked to do to enter the belly of this contraption was extraordinary. I mean, you have to put yourself in their mindset to have the bravery, the courage to do this. Is really spectacular. And just finally, I just want to end with this image. Danny spoke of the names of 1,500 or so Ethiopian Jews who perished on the way to get to Israel. The names are inscribed on these monuments, which are on Mount Herzl, the National Cemetery in Jerusalem. And every year they're honored in the presence of the leaders of the state of Israel, the president, the prime minister, the chiefs of staff, so on and so forth. And the president bows to the elders of the Ethiopian Jewish community in honor of the tremendous sacrifice that they made.
It's amazing. We have a question from Shelley and others. Most important question is, what happened to the Ethiopian Jews once they arrived in Israel? Were they able to excel, assimilate, thrive?
Danny, I think that's one for you to answer, please.
Well, yes, you can imagine that after 30 years, any profession that you can think about, you will find people of Ethiopian origin. They are officers in the army, in the police, in the fire brigade. They are lawyers, they are doctors, they are everything, everything. And it's going, all the time, every generation that is born in Israel, except for of course, the color of the skin, that is not going to change in many generations, but it's becoming less representative of a difference. People, we have to be honest, people always look with suspicion to someone who doesn't look like himself. But because these new generations of Ethiopian Jews are beginning to excel in many things, this people really respect them, and something is happening in the mentality of a country that anyway is represented by so many origins.
By the way, just to add that the recently appointed immigration minister of Israel, a wonderful lady, Peninnah Tamar-Shatta, Ethiopian Jewish woman, who herself at the age of 3 came over actually as part of Operation Moses. And something fascinating with, beg your pardon?
She's maybe a Jewish woman, but she's the only man in government.
Goes without saying. But one fascinating fact, which I learned quite recently, is Peninnah Tamar-Shatta is a descendant of a Kes. Kes is the Ethiopian Jewish equivalent of a rabbi. A Kes called Abba Mahari. Abba Mahari in 1862, led the first attempt to bring Ethiopian Jews, of course then, 1862, to the land, to Eretz Yisrael, not State of Israel, Eretz Yisrael, 1862. Set off by foot with, according to accounts of the day, with thousands of followers. Unfortunately, the attempt was ultimately futile. It failed, but it's revered as a moment in Ethiopian Jewish history as an attempt to get back to their ancestral homeland. And fast forward however many generations, and a minister in Israel's government is a descendant of this Ethiopian Jewish elder. I think that's tremendous.
It's amazing. Question from Diane and others. Danny, you lived through the operation, obviously. And so people want to know what you thought of the movie, and was it pretty close to what actually happened?
Well, the movie was, to be honest, I spoke a lot with a scriptwriter who was also director, who is an Israeli, by the way, Gidon Raff. And honestly, he told me from the beginning that this was going to be a Hollywood movie, and so many things would be added that did not happen in reality. which I always found a bit ridiculous because, facts were much more imaginative than the film itself. But he thought that he wanted to attract the American public, so he introduced, for example, the CIA in a very predominant role, which did not exist at all. We never did anything with the CIA in the field. We always operated completely alone, and we didn't need them to save us or something like that. And then several other things were not exactly, to say the least, real. I think that maybe for someone who never knew anything, and his first encounter with this story is the film, it gives you an idea, at least of the relationship that they developed between the black guy and the white guy. And this is one of the reasons that we called it Operation Brothers, was that type of relation. You see a little bit of it in that movie.
I wonder, we don't have too much time left, but I just wonder if you could describe what you were feeling when you watched people, when you helped load people on planes or on boats.
That's a wonderful question, because one of the most elating moments for me and for the others was when we saw the boats of the Navy getting far away from the coast, going to the mothership, or when it was an airlift, when after, the adrenaline that was running like crazy during the several minutes that the plane was on the ground, after we landed it in the middle of the desert, in the middle of the night, without any lights, anything, that in itself, that we never had an accident, that was something miraculous. But when we saw the plane airlifting, that was really the sense of achievement of something that is out of your own, ambitions or whatever.
I can't even imagine. It must have been just a stunning experience to see that happen. A couple more quick questions. Sorry, I'm having technical problems. Question from Deborah Lee. Can you comment about the most recent evacuation of Ethiopian Jews? And from Sharon, are there any Jews left in Ethiopia?
Oh, well, this is a very complicated story because people are spreading all kinds of rumors. What we know, and I'm not a specialist, I'm telling you because I don't deal with this. We have, there are about 8,000 people that are already approved for Aliyah, for immigration. And it's a question of how many can come at a given moment. But the government of Israel already 2 years ago made a decision to bring all those thousands that are left back to Israel. Now there are rumors that maybe someone found more in the Sinai mountains. They're talking about 150,000. That's, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, and as I said, I'm not a specialist, but I did deal with the emerging communities around the world, and you have to make a difference between people who maybe practice one or two traditions that are Jewish, for example, circumcision or Shabbat, but they're still non-Jewish, and others that came from Christianity to Judaism, but they are accomplishing all the mitzvot. So I don't think personally that there are more than the number that was already quoted by the government. I don't think there are any more.
Wow. And Raffi, I know you're busy talking about this book right now, but what's next on your plate? Do you have another book project planned, or what are you thinking of doing next? Can anything top this story?
Probably not, because it's really exceptional for very good reasons. But I'm developing another book, a different topic altogether, based on another true story about a survival of of a young Jewish woman in the Holocaust, which is a completely original story. Something which I've known about for many years, but really kind of sat on, not done anything with, but something I've really wanted to develop into a book. And in the fullness of time, I hope that this is going to happen, and it's something I'm working on now.
That's great. And last question, Raffi. Looking back on this project, this book project, was there anything that you learned what did you learn most? I mean, what did you take away from this? What do you think looking back on this story?
Well, there's a lot to choose from. As I've already stressed, 100% the admiration for Ethiopian Jews, which I didn't have before, and I feel quite ashamed that I've spent half a century of life on Earth without knowing enough about Ethiopian Jews. Thank God this opened my eyes to them. But it's a wonderful thing to. I mean, how often do you get to be accepted into a circle of trust among the people who belonged to, some of who still work for the Mossad, and sit across the table from them and learn the most incredible stories of modus operandi and tactics and subterfuge. And we don't have the time. I'd love to spend another half an hour talking about tremendous, Danny, shut your ears for the moment, but if I use the James Bond style methods which are employed, cash hidden in chocolate boxes. I'm not sure if that was true or not, but it was told to me, or things like that, which really, as a Jewish person and an admirer of the state of Israel, then to know that these people carry out these kinds of fantastic operations. I mean, it's what makes you tremendously proud. Absolutely. Talking about it, still gives me goosebumps.
I always thought that the running of checkpoints was something you do see in a Hollywood movie, until I read your book and realized that Danny actually did that. It was just astounding to read. But I would also imagine too, Raffi, that as a journalist, you write about, issues of the day, which are sometimes very depressing and sad. And this probably gave you, this whole group of people, Danny and others, to look, to admire and to be inspired by.
Completely. Absolutely. It's a story of positivity. The wonderful thing about it is, and this is another reason why I can really talk to audiences, non-Jewish audiences, it's not a political story. It's not about politics. So forget your preconceived ideas or notions about Israel and so on and so forth. It's a humanitarian story. It's about so much. It works on so many different layers. But it's about the triumph of the human spirit in the face of the most tremendous adversity. And if you'll allow me, I actually have in front of me here. This is a quote. It's only a sentence long. This is from the New York Times. It's not a friend. It's not the best friend of Israel in the world. But this is in 1985. This is from January 1985. The New York Times reporting on Operation Moses, slightly separate to the operation we're talking about. It came at the tail end of the operation led by Danny. But once Operation Moses, which was a top secret operation until it was exposed, once it came to light and it was written about, it was splashed across the front pages of every newspaper in the world. New York Times says this. Remember, 1985. I'm not talking about the current climate at the moment, but it has parallels. For the first time in history, thousands of Black people are being brought into a country, not in chains, but in dignity, not as slaves, but as citizens. I mean, wow.
That's incredible.
Yourself.
We've got a little more time if you'll indulge us for just a few more minutes, because so many people are interested. I wonder if you could show us that very quick video clip that plays off of the quote that you read just now from the Times. Is that handy?
Yes, if you just bear with me a second, I'll do my best to make it happen.
Yeah, no, that would be great. And while you're doing that, Danny, a question from Marilyn. Oh, go ahead.
Beg your pardon?
You ready?
There's a little bit of thematic music there.
Yes.
Danny, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Danny, quickly, while we're getting that video ready, which is such an incredible video, question from Marilyn, which is, what is your reaction to the recent agreement between Israel and Sudan?
Well, Raffi and me were exchanging some jokes about it. And of course, all the former members of my team, we are thinking about seriously of paying them a visit and see all those places. I hope that we will be left alone and they will let us leave also the country. But of course, this is something good. You know, Sudan used to be a real enemy. As an officer in the army, I fought against them in the Yom Kippur War. There was just in front of me, there was a Sudanese brigade fighting together with the Egyptian army. Any peace treaty that we make with any Arab country is good.
Raffi?
Okay. Yes. So forgive me for showing you my files here, but this may be the only way I can make it work. Can you see can you see video footage now?
No.
No, not working.
Okay, so I have to apologize for that. I don't want to hold up the show.
No worries. We have so many good questions. David asks, how were Mossad agents chosen for the mission?
Well, this is something that was quite unusual. Usually, headquarters, they choose who is going to participate in what operation. I was chosen, but once I needed the team essentially for the operating the resort, I went looking for candidates outside the office. And so most of my team members were people that I recruited from the outside, and I was looking for characteristics, for specific characteristics, apart of the fact that they had to be also able to take people to dive, to be diving instructors, and to participate as members of the team in the operational stages. I wanted them to be out of the box, people that could answer me. That I didn't want people obeying orders, because this operation was being, developed according to developments in the field, which is also very unusual. This type of organizations like this one that we're talking about usually prepare things very carefully. But the character of this operation that was meeting with people, this was not a military objective or an intelligence objective. You were meeting with real people, with pregnant women, with old men, with babies. Mm-hmm. So this is something that you have to be able to react. You have to be able to create things according to what develops.
Right. Yeah. Everything was moving so quickly. Edie asks a great question. I didn't even think about this, which is, how did you make sure that everybody that you were transporting was actually Jewish?
Well, that is very easy, because from the beginning, I always had a partner like Ferid Aklum, who was later replaced by others, Zimna Berhanu, Dani Asmani, others. They, of course, were always there to see who was Jewish and who was not. But I must tell you something. There was almost no no trial by outsiders to penetrate, because the Jews themselves, they would not have let. You have to understand that these people, the other Ethiopian refugees that were in the Sudan, were usually hostile to the Jews. It's not that, that so you can save a friend even if he's not Jewish, okay. But these people did not want them to be saved or to evacuate. So it was not difficult.
Well, but and Mima asks, which is a good next question, why couldn't Ethiopian Jews emigrate to Israel openly?
Well, Raffi explained it. From 1950, the law of return, up to 1975, they were not recognized as Jews under the law of return. In 1975, it was already, when the decision was made to recognize, the situation in Ethiopia was such that nobody could leave, no Jews and no others, because there was a military regime who was also communist. And there were no relationships whatsoever between Israel and Ethiopia.
Right, that makes sense. And we know what Raffi is hoping to do next. Danny, what are you doing right now? Our audience wants to know. What are your plans?
Well, I would like to be invited to another Zoom to speak about that. No, it's a subject that I've been doing for the last 2 years. There are lots of people returning to Judaism, especially in Latin America, where I was born. I speak the languages. People who were conversos or marranos, people who were obliged to become Christian 500 years ago in Spain and Portugal. So there are thousands of these people who would like to return to Judaism. And just to be clear, it's not because they want immediately to immigrate to Israel and be treated as a new immigrant. They just want to be recognized as returning to Judaism. And things like that are happening also in Africa and Asia. But that's a very long subject.
That sounds like a fascinating work. Do you think you'll slow down at some point or not anytime soon?
I don't feel that I need to slow down, Here I'm talking to you without my mask, but I'm confident in the future.
It's good to know.
And I hope that you all keep healthy.
Yes, we all do too. Raffi, anything else you wanted to add in terms of, I can't wait to see the movie now. Even though I know it's not quite the same as the book, I still want to see it. It's just the whole.
Sure. Watch the movie and keep your eyes open, because a certain person makes a cameo appearance, which he did not tell me about until I was watching the premiere on Netflix in my home here in London with my family on the couch. And there's a moment, it's just fleeting. And I did a double take and I said to my wife, Susie, I said, just pause, just take it back a second. And I looked again and I took a screenshot with my phone and sent it to Danny. And I said, is this you? And I think I just got from memory, I think I just got a cryptic thumbs up. So yeah, you're also talking to a Hollywood celebrity here as well, not just a former Mossad agent. It's the whole package.
Unbelievable. Well, I encourage everyone to read this book. I read a lot of books, and this one it's a quick read, it's exciting, and it makes you feel good when you're done reading it. So congratulations, it was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you all for a wonderful event. I want to thank Raffi Berg, Danny Limor, Debbi Cenziper. I guess the silver lining in all of this is that we have all of you joining us from different locations all across the country and the world even. So thank you so much. We do hope that everyone supports all of our authors by buying their books. We've partnered with Copper Dog Books in Beverly. It's an independent bookstore. And if you go on our website, you can link right to that store and purchase their books. So, and also Debbi's book as well. Can you just remind people what the name of your book is?
My second book was called, or is called, Citizen 865: The Hunt for Hitler's Hidden Soldiers in America. It came out in November, and it's a story about the U.S. Department of Justice search for Nazi war criminals on U.S. soil after World War II. True story.
Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you. And we have an amazing author lineup still to come. We have 7 more events as part of this series. And actually, we are partnering again with the Vilna Shul on our next event on October 29th, Thursday, with local author Mimi LeMay. She's the author of What We Will Become: A Mother, a Son, and a Journey of Transformation. It's a fascinating memoir. And you can go to our website for more information and to buy tickets for that. But I want to thank all of you for supporting our series. As a nonprofit, we are so grateful for your generosity and support. If you're looking for another way to support us, we are raffling off a beautiful pair of diamond earrings. You can go to our website to buy raffle tickets and to see a picture of those earrings. But anyway, thank you all again. We are so grateful, and stay healthy, stay well, have a wonderful Sunday, and just take care. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much. Thank you.